So today's going to be a short one. We're taking the stock Gladi and we're going to throw some new wheels on it. These are from OGUNKE RC. They're on Amazon. So these are from OGUNKE RC. Well, OGUNKE, I'm not sure. OGUNKE. They're on Amazon. They were like 29 bucks with the wheels and tires. I wanted to kind of check them out. I liked the design. They're very similar to like the RC Lions, kind of, but they're more rounded holes, and they have a couple different color options. They are beadlocks, but they don't have a beadlock ring. But they are separated. They do have their inner ring. And they have foams. The compound doesn't seem too bad. Let's see, they're called Rocks Tire. I'm not sure what they are, but they're kind of wide. They're not super huge in diameter. I mean, they're definitely more wide than the stock. Almost the same diameter as stock. This is for the smaller tire guys. I know there's some big tire guys out there. And trust me, we like our big tires too, but there is something about the smaller tires. Helps keep your LCG lower. You know, keep your center of gravity lower. So you have an LCG, you have low center of gravity. You can even see these guys. These are the RC4WDs. These are the Rock Crusher tires. And they're smaller. They're definitely not as wide. I like the wider tires for sure. I'd rather have the tire a little bit more wide than too big in diameter. Because again, the greater the diameter of the tire, the bigger around it is, the higher your center of gravity becomes. And then you slowly start to get issues if you get too tall. Here's all the hardware. 2 Allen keys to go in our Allen key collection. I don't know why we have 2. Oh, they're different sizes. What are the different sizes? There's the rears, which are actually what hold the beadlock together, and then there's just scale hardware. Well, it's technically not scale hardware, but essentially just decorative bolts for the front. They're smaller. Actual scale hardware, or what people consider scale hardware, are like on these RC4WDs, where it's an actual like lug versus being a bolt with the hex in it, right? These are like hex bolts. These an Allen key, whereas the RC4WDs are like a actual scale lug nut. But those are much, much, much more expensive. Those wheels by themselves are like $90. Again, these wheels and tires were only $30. So, like I said, I think that's pretty sticky. I mean, it's not like sticky. Like there's much better tire compounds out there, but for the price, these seem like they feel like you can hear it. And I'm not really pushing hard. It's just kind of, the lugs are pretty good on the side. They're pretty tall, pretty thick lugs. I don't know. Again, I'm not trying to say these are the best on the market. I just think they look cool, and they're priced well. We'll definitely put a link in the description below if you're interested. They have a couple different color options. One of the things that I like about actual beadlocks with beadlock rings is you can mix and match the beadlock rings if you're to get multiple colors, whereas this style, or even like the RC Lion style, it's a single color, right? So you can't like mix a black wheel with a red ring, or a purple wheel with a green ring. You need actual beadlock rings for that. But again, those are going to be more pricey too. Let's say if you're looking for a budget option, just to get some better wheels and tires, these are worth looking at. There's a couple other options out there, but these are one of them. I don't know why we're using the Allen key when we have real tools. And again, these lugs or bolts are just decorative. I'm going to do one and see how they look. So that's what they look with the bolts in there. The bolts are the 0.05 inch, and then the actual beadlock screws that go into the back that press the 2 sides together are 1.5. And you can just use an Allen key or a paper clip to line these up. And you can actually put in multiples, right? And then they're lined up into the holes, and then you can just push down and put in your screw. And that keeps your holes lined up and makes it so that it's easy just to push straight down. You don't have to worry about when you're pushing down, the top half or bottom half spins a little, and then you can't get your screw in. And if you notice any of your part of your tire starting to pop out, you can always back a screw out just a little bit and kind of loosen up the ring, or the 2 halves, and then work it back in there. Just kind of push it back in. If it pops out too much, you'll have to start back over and line everything back up. But usually if it's just a little bit, you can kind of just tuck it back in there and make sure everything looks like it's fitting nice in there. And then you can tighten it down some more. Just like a real wheel, you kind of want to tighten things in a cross pattern. So do one side, then do the other. Always remember, don't over tighten. So go here, here, and then go like back to here, here, and then back to here, here. That way it's evenly tightening down the two halves, right? If you just did it all on one side, you could end up with it kind of canted or, you know, not fitting very well. So ideally, you want to kind of go down evenly as you're smashing them together. Ta-da! Okay, we're all mounted. Let's do the other 3, and then we'll throw them on the rig. Now, just a reminder, even after you've tightened these down in your star pattern, you're going to want to go back through and just kind of test and snug up each one, because as you're tightening it down, it's taking some of the pressure off of like the first screw you did, because the others are tightening down, and you're tightening against rubber, so some of them will still be a little bit loose. So just go through and re-snug everything back up. Just remember not to over tighten these. You could easily, especially on these front ones that are decorative, you could easily twist off one of these bolt heads if you over tighten it, because you're just going straight into a solid piece of aluminum. It's not like pinching something together where there's a little bit of give there. It's just solid aluminum, so it's easy to, I've seen people break these off a lot in other wheels. So just know that don't over tighten them. There's no reason to over tighten them. Again, they're just for aesthetics. And worst case, if you really want, you can use some thread locker. Just use blue. You can do that on the front and back. Just don't get it on any of the plastic or rubber, because thread locker destroys rubber and plastic, unless it's plastic safe thread locker, obviously. And then these come with an extra screw of each kind, so you get an extra decorative bolt as well as the rear beadlock bolt. So worst case, if you lose one or one falls out, you've got a backup. So that's good. All right, let's go ahead and put them on. And yeah, actually we're gonna weigh them first. So we're gonna take these off and then we'll weigh them just to show you a weight difference, and then we'll put them on. You may not be able to see this very well. For some reason, my scale display doesn't show up well on the camera. But we're zeroed out, and our stock tire and wheel is 10.66 grams, and our OGUNKE is 24.47. So you're more than doubling your low wheel weight. Part of it has to do with the fact that there's probably the foams in here. These are aluminum. You have extra hardware. The tires are a little bit wider. Maybe the material's even a little more thick. Remember, the stock ones are no foam. They have no foams in them at all. And these guys do have foams. Another thing you might consider doing, and we're probably going to go ahead and do this, is you want to vent these. And we like to vent using a drill bit. That way you are actually not just, because if you could use a safety pin and just poke a hole, right? But usually that hole will just seal back up, right? So the air won't get in and out very easily. What you want to do is either heat up that safety pin so it melts it a little bit, or use a drill bit. Now, I wouldn't recommend around mold lines. If there's mold lines, you want to do it off to the sides, but we'll just twist it, pull it out, get a little bit of the material out. Twist it in, pull it out, get a little material out. And you do it between the lugs, and we're just alternating sides. And this will just help prevent the tires from staying flat. It'll also give them the ability to conform over rocks a little better. One other little thing I like to do is just take one of the lugs and color it in with a Sharpie. Or just mark it in some way. That way I know where I started when I was venting. You can kind of see it's just got a little bit of a color difference. And then as I go around venting, I know when I've gotten back to where I started. That way I don't undervent or overvent, put too many holes in. You know, at least have an idea. I know that I made it all the way around the tire. You can mark them on the back of the wheel, or however, but you can usually see the Sharpie mark fairly easily, so we like that method. Some wheels are vented. I believe these stock ones have a little hole in them. You can see there's a little tiny hole in there. And so that allows air to go in and out. You could also drill a little hole in your wheels. These wheels are not vented. So again, we're just kind of drilling a little hole in, pulling it out. Okay? And that'll give it the ability to conform a little better when it's going over rocks. That's one thing you do want to be careful of. Make sure you try not to, don't pull foam out with them. If you can do it without pulling out the foam, that's ideal. So just don't go too deep. You can even just pinch them a little bit to help lift it away. Also go in and side. See if we pulled some foam out. So just be careful. You could also vent the tires before you put them on the rim. When you'd have to take them all apart, pull the foams out and then vent them. And then you can put your foams back in and build the wheels. So one other thing we like to do when we're pulling off wheels and tires on a new rig, or if we've changed axle hexes, the wheel hub hexes, is make sure our fitment is good for right in here, right? I've mentioned in a lot of the other videos that you over tighten these, you end up pushing this wheel hex up against the bearing too tight, and then you get binding, and that's how you burn up your motor, stuff like that. So one way to help that is to, on the wheel hex, you've got this little protruding nipple portion. You can just shave that down just a little bit. Just use some sandpaper and just make sure it's even. You want it to be evenly sanded down, but just sand it down just a little bit, and that'll give your pin the ability to actually set all the way into the recess, right? Because sometimes the pin's not hitting the back of the recess of that little notch that's in there, and these kind of ridges are pushing onto the bearing too hard. So this will allow you a little bit more space to tighten your wheels down, give you a little bit more axle to tighten them down just a little bit, and then also rest your axle pin, this little guy, on the inside of the hex versus the hex on your bearing. Now, you don't want to take off too much. If you take off too much, you end up with a lot of slop, and you don't want slop, but you also don't want binding. So just a little bit, and you should be able to feel it, and you can pull on your axle, pull your hex in tight, and you can see how much play you have or don't have. Sometimes you need to do it on a stock one, sometimes you don't. See that? If I don't push the hex, you can see there's a lot of play, but if I push the hex in, I'm holding the hex in, there's actually no play at all because the nipples of the hex or the ridge of the hex is pushing all the way up against the bearing. So we want to take it down just a tad. We're just using some 600 grit. Make sure it's on a flat surface. You don't want to kind of do it by hand. Ideally, you want it to be flat, and you want to just kind of sand it down a little bit and then turn it, sand it, turn it, sand it. Because even though you think you're pressing completely flat, you're not. So I like to turn the hex a little as I'm sanding. That way it's probably a little more even. And there you go. I sanded it down a little. Throw it back on here. And again, it doesn't take much. It's better to sand, test fit, because if you take off too much, there's no fixing it. There you go. And now we've got I'm pushing it tight. It's all the way tight. And I've got just the tiniest amount of play, just a little bit. So what that means now is when I tighten my wheel down on, I should be able to tighten it all the way down without it binding at all. And again, you don't want to over tighten these either. These are little nylon rings inside these nuts, and that's actually what the axle is threading onto, is the nylon. So you can easily strip out the nylon if you over tighten. But this will allow you a little bit more axle to put your nylon nut onto, which is always nice. Again, it's not much. It's not even probably a millimeter. But it's enough to make a difference usually. There we go. Now I feel like I'm able to get it pretty tight, and there's just that, I mean, you can't even see it on camera, but I can feel it click just a little bit. And look at that. Like I said, one of my things is you should be able to blow on your tire and it move. If you can't move your tire by blowing on it, you are too tight. And what's crazy is I am all the way tight. Like, oh, tight enough, and we're good. Okay? All right, let's go ahead and do the other side. All right, there we have it. The OGUNKE RC wheels, they went on pretty well. They fit well. Like I mentioned, when we're sanding down our wheel hexes, make sure you test fitting each one for each spot it's going in. Your rears are going to be different than your fronts. The fronts usually require a little bit more sanding to take off. I think the axles are a little bit shorter than what the rear axles are between the pin and the bearing, so they usually take a little bit more. But again, just make sure you're not taking off too much. Always test fit, try, sand, test, and yeah, I think these look pretty cool. We dig them. Again, we're going to link to them in the description below. They offer a bunch of different other colors. They've got red and green and orange, and these black ones, and a bunch of other SCX24 parts. A lot of it's kind of the same as a lot of the other Chinese parts, because these are Chinese, but they do have some cool brass kits and brass extended hexes and knuckles and diff covers and stuff like that. And they're probably worth checking out. We definitely like their wheels. And we're not sure on the tires yet, but they feel good. Pretty sure they're going to stick pretty well. I mean, they're not Patagonias, they're not Trail Kings, but for a budget and for a one and done shop, you just buy it and you get both, the wheel and the tire. Yeah, can't complain. All right, guys, make sure you like, subscribe, share, comment below. What are your favorite wheel and tire combos? Tell us your favorites. I'm sure we're going to get a lot of Mudslingers and Trail Kings and Hyraxes and Patagonias, RC4WD wheels and whatnot. But yeah, let's have a discussion. Talk to me.